They say things without knowing the weight they carry. Words float in the air like light clouds, but some land heavy, pressing down on the chest without warning. Have you ever felt that quiet heaviness? The kind that does not shout but whispers over and over, reminding you of what others see, what they think you are, what they assume about you. It is not always cruel. Sometimes it is simple observation, a passing remark, a look that lingers too long. Yet even the softest voice can leave a mark if it finds the tender spaces inside you. And there is a strange loneliness in that. When the world speaks, it often does so with certainty, as if the story has already been told. They see only the surface, and the surface can lie. It does not tell them of the quiet nights spent in thought, of the small decisions made when no one is watching, of the ways the heart bends and stretches in silence. But still, their words reach you. You feel them settle, not always with anger, not always with sorrow, but with a soft, persistent ache that seems to grow heavier as the day goes on. Sometimes it is not even the words themselves, but the pause that follows them. That quiet moment when nothing is said, yet everything is understood. They have spoken, and you are left alone with the echo. And what do you do with that echo? Do you push it away, or do you let it linger? The heart learns to notice these moments. It learns the language of quiet discomfort. You start to feel a distance between what is spoken and what is real. You start to notice that the judgments, the opinions, the quiet disbelief in your path, they are not about you, they are about them. But in that realization, there is no immediate relief. For even when you understand that their words are not truth, they can still sting. The human mind is curious in its suffering. It turns the words over, turns them inside out, asks questions it does not want answers to. Why do they see me this way? Have I shown them anything that could make them believe otherwise? Or is it simply their nature to misjudge, to measure everything by the measure of their own understanding? There is no easy answer, only a quiet space to sit with the feeling, to let it pass through like a slow, unseen river. In those moments, the heart becomes a listener. It listens to the voice of others, yes, but it also listens to itself. And it begins to notice things it had never noticed before. The small steadiness of a breath, the way a hand rests lightly in the lap, the slow rise and fall of a chest in the stillness of the night. These things are not loud. They do not announce themselves. But they are real, and they are patient. And in that patient noticing, a sense of inner space begins to open. Perhaps it is in this quiet space that the first threads of understanding begin to weave themselves. You see that the weight of words can be felt, but it does not have to be carried forever. It is a visitor, and visitors leave. You begin to notice the difference between the voice of the world and the voice of your own heart. One speaks in certainty, in opinion, in reflection of what it believes to be true. The other whispers in the language of being, of simply existing, of witnessing without judgment, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to recognize which voice is yours. There is also a strange beauty in this heaviness, if one allows oneself to see it. For in the feeling of being weighed down, one begins to understand weight itself. One begins to understand the contours of patience, the edges of quiet endurance, the soft strength that comes not from proving anything, but from simply holding oneself gently, without collapse, without hurry, without seeking acknowledgement. It is a delicate learning, like watching a candle burn slowly in the dark. The light is small, but it is steadfast, and as the night deepens, the ache softens. It does not vanish entirely, for some echoes are slow to fade, but the heart learns a small, important truth, that silence is not emptiness. It is a space to feel, to breathe, to understand, that the weight of words, even when it presses close, can be observed without being absorbed, that a moment of stillness is often stronger than 1,000 replies. So perhaps the first step is this: to sit quietly, to notice the weight without panic, to feel it and let it be. To watch it settle, to watch it move, to watch the subtle ways it shapes your awareness. And doing so, to begin to remember that you are here, in your own quiet presence, and that this alone holds a kind of strength that the world's voices cannot touch. There is a curious restlessness that comes when the world speaks to you, when voices press in from all directions, and the heart feels the pull to respond. Have you noticed it? That small tension that rises like a quiet tide, urging movement, reaction, some kind of answer. It is not always loud. Often it is gentle, almost invisible, a soft tug at the mind, a subtle insistence that you must not remain still. And yet, in that urging, there is a strange kind of noise, a kind that is not spoken aloud but felt deep within. It begins softly, like the rustle of leaves before a breeze. You hear a remark, a judgment, a glance that carries meaning, and somewhere inside the mind begins to turn. It turns the thought over, turning it again, imagining what could be said, what could be done, how you might be understood. The heart quickens, and the breath shifts. There is a pull to act, a desire to push back, to explain, to make the world see. And in that pull, a quiet tension grows, subtle but unrelenting. Why does the heart feel such urgency? Perhaps it is a longing for recognition, a wish to be seen as whole, as worthy, as more than the fleeting judgments of others. Or perhaps it is simply the nature of attention itself, the way the mind resists stillness when it senses challenge. You feel it in the tightening of the chest, the slight clench of the jaw, the restless fingers that do not yet move. It is a noise without sound, yet it can fill a room, fill a mind, fill a life if left unchecked. And there is a strange truth in noticing this. The noise is never entirely external. It is not only in the words or actions of others, but in the way the mind responds to them. The heart hears, the mind interprets, and suddenly the small stirrings of judgment outside, you become a storm inside. You begin to imagine every possible reply, every imagined consequence, every imagined misunderstanding. The noise multiplies quietly, invisibly, until it feels as if it might overwhelm the gentle stillness that exists somewhere deep within. Have you ever paused in that moment? To simply feel the tension without pushing it away, without responding, without attempting to quiet it. It is not easy. The mind protests. It whispers that action is necessary, that defense is required, that a reply is owed. And yet, when the body remains still, when the breath does not rush, when the gaze softens rather than sharpens, a small space begins to appear. It is a narrow space at first, almost invisible, a crack of quiet that allows one to witness the noise without being swallowed by it. In this space, the pull of reaction begins to lose its urgency. The heart realizes that it can feel the restlessness without surrendering to it, that it can notice the rise of tension, the quiet insistence of the mind, and allow it to pass like wind through the trees. The pull to act becomes less a command and more a passing suggestion. And in that subtle shift, something remarkable begins to happen. A small freedom emerges. Freedom not from the world, not from the voices outside, but from the storm within. It is in these moments that the value of stillness becomes clear, when the mind does not leap to respond, when the heart does not tighten with every passing remark. When one simply observes the stirrings of tension and lets them flow past, there is a clarity that comes softly, almost imperceptibly. One begins to see the difference between what is real and what is imagined, between what must be addressed and what is only noise. And in that seeing, a quiet authority begins to grow, gentle and unspoken, rooted not in proving anything, but in simply existing without disturbance. Yet the world continues its murmurs, and the pull to act will return again and again. But each time it comes, there is a chance to notice it, to feel it, to sit with it without yielding. The tide rises, yes, but it need not sweep you away. You begin to recognize that the restlessness is not your enemy, but a teacher. It shows where the mind is still caught in the habits of reaction, where the heart is unsettled by expectation. And in watching it, in feeling it, in allowing it to be without answering, one learns the gentle art of quiet presence. And so the day stretches onward, and the quiet pull may return 100 times, but each time it comes, there is a choice, always a choice, to observe, to breathe, to remain. In the stillness, the mind softens, the heart loosens its grip, and the noise, though persistent, loses its power. And in this gentle mastery of oneself, there is a kind of calm that feels like the slow settling of evening, a quiet assurance that even in the midst of noise, the soul can remain unshaken, patient, and whole. There is a quiet weight in being unseen, in carrying a life that is misunderstood. Have you felt it? The subtle ache that comes not from words, but from absence, from spaces between what is said and what is truly known. They look, they listen, they speak, but they do not see, not really. They only see what they wish to see, what fits into their own understanding, and in that, the truth of who you are remains hidden. It is a strange loneliness, not loud or bitter, but soft, persistent, like the shadow of a tree stretching across the ground as the sun moves across the sky. When one is misunderstood, the mind begins to wander. It wonders at the reasons, the small details that might have been misread, the intentions that went unnoticed. Did they not see the quiet patience in your actions, the careful thought in every choice? Or do they not wish to see, because the world is too busy measuring by its own standards, too eager to classify, to judge, to label? And in that wondering, a subtle tension forms, not of anger, but of longing. A longing to be seen, to be understood, to be known without distortion. And yet, there is also a gentle realization that comes with this feeling. You begin to notice that being misunderstood does not always require a response. That sometimes the world's view is a reflection of itself, not of you. That the assumptions, the quiet disbelief, the faint skepticism, these are theirs to carry, not yours. And still, even with that understanding, the heart feels the sting. For the human spirit is wired to seek connection, to wish for recognition, to hope that its quiet efforts will not vanish into the mist of misunderstanding. There are moments when this ache is sharpest. In the silence after a word is spoken, when their gaze shifts, when their thoughts seem to pass over you without pause, the quiet of misunderstanding presses close. And in that pressing, the heart becomes keenly aware of itself. It notices the small truths it holds, the unseen choices, the private victories that no one applauds. It realizes that much of life is lived in this quiet realm where recognition is rare, and yet the self endures small, but unbroken. Perhaps it is in this unseen space that the first seeds of inner strength begin to grow. For when the world does not notice, when words fail to capture the essence of being, one must learn to notice oneself. One must learn to honor the quiet efforts, the subtle decisions, the small acts of patience and care. And in this honoring, there is a soft power that is not loud or visible, but steady and enduring. It does not need approval, for it exists independently, rooted in the simple act of being fully present within oneself. Have you ever sat in that quiet and noticed the rhythm of your own life? The slow unfolding of thought, the gentle rise and fall of breath, the faint beating of the heart as it moves through unseen trials? There is a wisdom there, a quiet understanding that the world's misreading does not diminish your truth. You are still whole, you are still present, you are still growing, even if no one else can see the growth unfolding day by day, moment by moment. And in the midst of being misunderstood, there is a strange gift. the ability to see clearly who you are, without the distraction of constant judgment. The world may offer its opinions, its quiet disbelief, its misinterpretations, yet within the self there is a calm observer, steady and patient, able to watch the ripples of misunderstanding pass by without being swept away. There is a dignity in this quiet endurance, a strength that is soft, invisible, and unshakable. The heart learns, slowly, to hold both feelings at once, the ache of being unseen and the gentle pride of knowing oneself. It learns that misunderstanding is not a failure, nor is it a verdict on worth. It is simply a condition of life, a quiet truth that the outer world will never fully grasp the inner world. And in this learning, there is a deep reflective peace, a sense of space in which the self can breathe freely, untouched by the fleeting judgments of others. And so one sits in that quiet, feeling the gentle weight of misunderstanding, allowing it to be, acknowledging it without surrendering to it. And in the stillness, a small truth becomes clear. To be misunderstood is not the same as to be diminished. The heart continues to move, to learn, to grow. It carries its own light, softly, quietly, without the need for eyes to notice, without the need for words to describe it. It is enough to simply be, fully and gently, in the quiet presence of oneself. In the stillness that follows being unseen and misunderstood, there comes a moment when the mind begins to turn inward. Have you felt it? The quiet invitation to look at yourself without distraction, without expectation, without the weight of others' eyes? It is not sudden or loud. It comes like a soft breeze, brushing against the mind, stirring the thoughts that have been resting quietly in the corners. And in that stirring, one begins to notice the small truths that were always there, hidden beneath the noise of judgment and misunderstanding. Tea is a strange and gentle thing, this act of turning inward. At first, it feels almost like hesitation, as if the heart is unsure whether it is safe to look so closely. There is a carefulness in the awareness, a quiet respect for the thoughts that begin to rise. And slowly, with patience, a mirror appears, not of reflection in glass, but of reflection in the mind, where each feeling, each choice, each quiet act of courage can be seen clearly. And in seeing, one begins to understand. You notice the quiet ways in which you have held yourself, the subtle endurance that has carried you through days when no one else noticed, the patience that has not been applauded, the small decisions made in silence, the moments when you have chosen presence over reaction. These are not dramatic or loud, but they are real and they are strong. And in this noticing, a quiet pride begins to grow, one that does not seek acknowledgement, one that does not demand recognition, but simply rests in the truth of what has been lived. And perhaps the most remarkable part of this reflection is the gentle realization that you are not the sum of what others say about you. Their opinions, their judgments, their misunderstandings, they exist outside of you, like clouds drifting across a vast sky. And the sky, despite the shadows, remains vast and steady. In the quiet mirror of your own mind, you begin to see that who you are, at the deepest level, cannot be touched by fleeting voices or passing doubts. You are here, present, observing yourself with a careful, soft attention that has been missing for so long. There is also a subtle questioning that arises in this inward gaze. Why did I react so quickly before? Why did the weight of their words press so heavily upon me? And as these questions rise, they are met not with judgment, but with gentle curiosity. You begin to see the moments when the mind allowed itself to be swept away, when the heart leaned too heavily on the opinions of others, when the illness was abandoned for the fleeting satisfaction of reply or defense. And in seeing these moments, the mind does not blame itself, but simply observes, quietly and without hurry. And then comes the small wonder of discovery. In observing, in reflecting, one notices the spaces between thought and feeling, between impulse and action. There is a stillness there, a quiet pause that always existed but was rarely acknowledged, and in this pause one begins to realize that not every moment requires response, not every feeling demands expression, not every judgment deserves recognition. There is a quiet power in noticing these spaces, in allowing them to exist, in letting the self breathe without disturbance. The inner mirror also reveals the gentle patterns of growth that have gone unnoticed. The moments when patience was practiced, when restraint was chosen, when quiet observation was preferred over hasty words. These moments are small, but they are steady, like drops of water shaping saint. One over time. And in recognizing them, there is a soft reassurance that even in the quietest, most overlooked spaces of life, the self has been quietly learning, quietly strengthening, quietly becoming more whole. And in the deepening reflection, a sense of clarity begins to emerge. You see the difference between the fleeting voices outside and the enduring truths within. You see that the self is not a fragile thing shaken by opinion or disturbance, but a patient, observing presence, capable of holding both awareness and stillness at the same time. And in this clarity there is a gentle relief, a quiet settling of the heart that has carried so much weight for so long. So in this inward gaze one learns to watch without hurry, to observe without judgment, to notice without needing to act. The mirror shows the truth of the self, patient and enduring, gentle and strong, capable of holding both shadow and light. And in this quiet revelation, the mind begins to understand what has been hidden all along. That inner strength is born not in noise or reaction, but in stillness, in observation, in the soft, unhurried reflection of the heart upon itself. There comes a moment when the heart begins to notice a choice, quiet and subtle, like the soft shift of wind across a still lake. Have you felt it? The gentle awareness that a response is possible but not necessary, that a word can be spoken, a reaction offered, or one can simply remain in the quiet center of oneself, untouched by the pull of the moment. It is not a sudden power nor a feeling of triumph. It is a small, steady knowing that not everything requires movement, that not every stirring in the mind must find its echo in action. At first it is difficult. The mind protests gently, whispering that one should reply, that one should explain, that one should defend, and the heart feels the familiar tug, a restlessness that rises quietly, pressing for expression. But in the space of stillness, one begins to notice something remarkable. The urge to react does not have to control the body, does not have to shape the words, does not have to disturb the calm of the inner world. It can be felt, acknowledged, and allowed to pass without disturbance. And in feeling it pass, there is a gentle dignity that arises. Not pride or arrogance, but a quiet sense of holding oneself intact, of choosing presence over noise, observation over impulsive action. There is something tender in this restraint, a soft but enduring strength that grows not from proving anything, but from simply choosing to remain whole, even when provoked. And in this choice, the world's judgments and opinions lose their urgency, their weight softens, and the mind can breathe freely once more. Have you noticed the moments when the heart chooses silence over reply? They are not always easy to find, nor do they come all at once. They are small decisions, repeated, patient, almost imperceptible. Perhaps it is in the pause before a word is spoken, in the slow intake of breath before tension turns to action, in the quiet observation of one's own thoughts. These are the moments that teach the self the gentle art of stillness, the quiet mastery of inner space. And in noticing them, one begins to see the subtle beauty of restraint. There is also a deep observation that comes with choosing silence. One begins to see the patterns that once led to unnecessary disturbance, the impulses that pulled the mind into chaos, the restless movements that scattered peace, the words that were spoken to satisfy a fleeting need to be seen or heard. And in seeing these patterns, without judgment, only with careful awareness, the heart begins to recognize the value of stillness. It is a teacher that asks nothing, expects nothing, yet offers understanding that is steady and true. And with this awareness, a strange kind of freedom emerges. Freedom not in loud declarations, not in proving oneself, not in winning or being understood, but in the quiet knowledge, that the self remains intact, even when the world presses close, even when others demand explanation, even when judgments swirl like wind through the trees. The heart learns that it can feel the pull of the moment, the stirrings of reaction, without surrendering to them. And in this learning, a subtle authority begins to grow, one that is soft, gentle, and unshakable. It is remarkable how the quiet choice not to react shapes the inner world. In the space created by restraint, one begins to notice the details that were once overlooked, the gentle rhythm of the breath, the slow unfolding of thought, the soft pulse of presence that moves steadily, unnoticed, beneath the surface of disturbance. These are small treasures, fragile but real, waiting for attention, waiting to be honored in silence. And in honoring them, the self grows quietly, steadily, without noise, without recognition, and there is also patience that develops in this practice. Patience with oneself, when the mind still protests, when the heart still wishes to defend, when the body still tightens with old habit. Patience with others who may never notice, who may never understand, who may continue to speak without seeing, and patience with the quiet flow of life itself, which does not hurry, does not demand, does not explain its own rhythm. In this patience there is a gentle wisdom, an inner compass that guides without pressure, without urgency, without haste. So the choice to remain silent, to hold one's peace, to observe rather than react, becomes a quiet ritual of presence. It is not about proving strength, nor about gaining control, nor about showing others. It is about honoring the self, about creating a space where the heart and mind can breathe freely, undisturbed. And in this space, one begins to notice the quiet power of being unshaken, of moving through the world with a steady calm, of carrying a dignity that is soft, patient, and quietly unbreakable. There is a subtle strength that grows quietly. When one practices restraint, when one chooses stillness over reaction again and again. Have you noticed it? The slow unfolding of patience, the gentle deepening of calm, the quiet confidence that rises not from words, but from the simple act of holding oneself steady? It is not loud or dramatic. It does not call attention or seek applause. It moves softly, like the gentle shaping of a river through stone, unseen but persistent, shaping the heart and mind over time. At first, the growth is almost invisible. One may not feel it in the moment, not notice it as it spreads quietly like roots stretching beneath the soil. But if you pause and reflect, if you watch the subtle shifts within yourself, you begin to see that something has changed. The old restlessness has softened, the pull to act without thought has grown weaker, the quiet voice inside that observes, that waits, that considers, has grown steadier, more patient, more unshakable. There is a gentle wisdom in this slow growth. T teaches that strength is not always shown in what is done, but often in what is held back. The mind begins to recognize that restraint is not weakness, it is not fear. It is a deliberate, careful shaping of the self, a careful protection of the inner space, a quiet cultivation of presence. And in this recognition, the heart begins to rest more deeply, no longer tossed by every passing opinion, no longer pulled by every stirring in the world. Have you felt the quiet power that comes from restraint? It is different from the power the world speaks of. It does not demand acknowledgement. It does not seek to impress or to prove. It is steady, patient, and gentle, moving silently through the mind and heart, shaping the way one responds, shaping the way one lives. One begins to notice that actions, even small ones, carry more weight when they come from a place of calm rather than impulse. That words, when spoken from quiet understanding rather than reaction, hold a kind of gravity that cannot be ignored. And in this quiet growth, one begins to see the patterns of life differently. The provocations, the judgments, the misunderstandings that once stirred anxiety or restlessness now pass like clouds across the sky. The heart remains steady beneath them. The mind observes without being carried away. And the self begins to understand that inner power is not measured by what is seen, but by the depth of calm one carries within, by the steadiness that persists when the world shifts and sways around you. There is also a subtle joy in this learning, not loud or fleeting, but soft and enduring. It comes in the moments when one notices that the urge to react has weakened, when one observes a difficult situation without disturbance, when one feels the quiet assurance of knowing that the self is intact, that presence is preserved, that dignity is unbroken. These moments are small, almost imperceptible, yet they carry a profound sense of peace, a gentle satisfaction that is not dependent on the approval of others. And with time, this quiet growth becomes a guide. It shapes the choices one makes, the words one speaks, the way one moves through life. It teaches patience, not as a distant ideal, but as a living practice. It teaches observation, not as detachment, but as a careful attention to the subtle rhythms of thought, feeling, and experience. It teaches that restraint, when chosen with awareness, is not a limitation, but a source of freedom. The freedom to remain whole, to act with clarity, to live without being disturbed by every passing wave of opinion or impulse. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about this slow cultivation is that it does not announce itself. One may look back and realize that the self has become steadier, calmer, more patient, more observant, without ever intending it. And in this quiet discovery, there is a soft wonder, a sense that the heart has learned something profound, not through struggle or force, but through gentle endurance, through repeated practice of being still, through allowing the self to grow in silence, unseen and unhurried. And so the days continue, and the small strength continues to shape the inner world. One meets moments of challenge with a quiet steadiness. One observes disturbance without surrendering to it. One feels the pull to react, yet responds only when it serves the self, not the world's insistence. And in this gentle mastery of restraint, one discovers the subtle, enduring power of the quiet self, the calm presence that grows slowly, steadily, and without need for recognition, a power that is soft, patient, and entirely unshakable. Even when the world continues to speak, even when voices rise around you, there is a moment when the heart begins to listen differently. Have you noticed it? That quiet shift, when the rush to respond softens, when the need to defend fades, and instead of reacting, you simply observe. They speak, yet you are not carried by their words. You hear them, yes, but there is a distance, a calm space that allows their voices to pass without disturbance. And in this space, a gentle authority begins to grow, one that does not shout, does not demand, and yet cannot be shaken. It is not easy at first. The mind notices the pull, the familiar stirrings of reaction, the quiet insistence that something must be said. And the heart feels it too, the tension rising softly, pressing for movement, for reply, for proof. You are seen. But when you breathe into the stillness, when you allow the voice of observation to guide you instead of impulse, the noise begins to lose its power. You begin to notice that being calm does not mean being passive. It means holding your center, remaining present, and moving only when your own quiet authority calls. And in this quiet listening, one begins to see the world more clearly. The judgments, the criticisms, the misunderstandings, They are all voices passing by, shapes without substance, shadows without weight. They do not define you. They do not touch the steady presence within, and in seeing this, a soft confidence rises, not the loud kind that demands acknowledgement, but the gentle assurance that you are intact, that your inner ground is firm, that no passing wave can wash away the quiet self that has been patiently nurtured. Have you felt the subtle power of this calm observation? It is unlike the strength that moves with force. It does not rely on proving it self or on bending others to your view. It moves quietly, with patience and care, noticing everything, responding only when it serves the self, and allowing everything else to pass like wind over a still pond. There is a wisdom in this, a knowing that the world will speak, the world will judge, and yet your heart can remain untouched. And in that untouched space, the mind becomes clear, the body relaxed, the spirit patient and whole, and perhaps the most remarkable thing is how it changes the way you see interaction itself. When the world's words no longer pull you into haste or disturbance, you notice subtleties that were once overlooked. The tone of a voice, the shift in expression, the quiet spaces between words, all of these speak volumes when you are listening fully, without reaction. And in listening, you begin to understand not just the words, but the currents beneath them, the intentions, the fears, the restlessness that lives in everyone. There is a quiet compassion in this, understanding, a gentle empathy that rises naturally from presence rather than effort. And with presence comes choice. You may speak, or you may remain silent. You may act, or you may watch. And each choice is guided not by fear, not by urgency, not by the need to prove yourself, but by a careful, quiet attention to what is true for you. The heart learns that not every disturbance must be answered. The mind sees that not every opinion needs acknowledgement. And the self begins to rest in the gentle authority that comes from choosing wisely, from responding from clarity rather than impulse. There is also a patience that grows in this practice. Patience with yourself, when the urge to react is strong, when old habits whisper insistently, when the heart still aches for recognition. Patience with the world, which continues its murmurs, which continues to measure, which continues to speak without truly seeing. And patience with time itself, which unfolds quietly, revealing the subtle truths that can only be observed slowly, without hurry or expectation. In this patience, the self discovers an inner steadiness that is profound, enduring, and softly unshakable. And as this calm listening deepens, there is a sense of quiet power that rises from within. It is not a power of control, nor a power that seeks to dominate, but a power of being fully present, of holding the self intact amidst disturbance, of moving through the world without losing footing. One begins to notice how much lighter the heart feels when it is not pulled into every passing tide of opinion, how much freer the mind becomes when it observes without haste, how much peace the spirit can carry when it rests in quiet authority. And so, as the voices rise and fall, as judgments and opinions continue to swirl, there is a gentle steadiness that remains. The heart listens, the mind observes, and the self remains whole. They speak and you hear, they move and you watch. And in this quiet practice, a gentle power is born, a power that is patient, calm, enduring, and entirely rooted in the stillness of the self. There is a quiet transformation that happens when the self has been patiently nurtured through silence, observation, and restraint. Have you noticed it? The gentle shift that comes not with noise or triumph, but with the soft unfolding of understanding, of presence, of inner steadiness. It is not sudden. It arrives slowly, almost imperceptibly, like the dawn creeping across a darkened landscape, touching everything softly, reshaping the edges of the world without force or demand. And in this transformation, one begins to feel a sense of inner power that does not shout, that does not need acknowledgement, but imply exists, calm and enduring. The power grows quietly, not from the absence of challenge, but from the patience with which each moment is met. The provocations, the misunderstandings, the judgments that once pressed so heavily now glide past like leaves on a gentle stream. They are noticed, yes, but they no longer carry the weight they once did. And in this noticing without attachment, a deep sense of self-respect begins to settle in the heart. It is not pride or defiance, but a gentle recognition the self is intact, whole, capable of holding stillness, capable of holding peace, capable of being fully present without needing to prove anything. And perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this transformation is the quietness of it. There is no need for applause or acknowledgement. There is no need to show others the growth that has taken place. The strength is invisible, soft, and entirely inward. It lives in the careful observation of one's own thoughts, in the patient breathing through each stirring of the mind, in the gentle awareness of the body and heart. And in this quiet presence, the self becomes steady, grounded, and resilient, able to face the world without being carried away by its turbulence. Have you ever sat in this quiet and felt the subtle power of simply being? It is different from the power that others recognize. It does not demand attention, and it does not bend the world to its will. Instead, it flows gently from the calmness that has been cultivated over time, the calm that comes from choosing silence over reaction, from observing without haste, from allowing the self to remain whole while the world moves on around it. And in this gentle authority there is a freedom unlike any other, freedom from disturbance, freedom from need, freedom from the insistence of the world to measure, judge, or define you. And with this freedom comes a subtle joy, soft and quiet, not loud or fleeting. It is the joy of knowing that the self has endured, has grown, has remained patient and present. It is the joy of watching the patterns of life move without being swept into them, of witnessing the rise and fall of opinions, judgments, and expectations, and feeling only the calm steadiness of your own being. It is a quiet satisfaction, a soft peace, a gentle light that warms the heart without needing to be seen. In this quiet power, one also begins to notice the subtle ways in which life moves. The heart becomes sensitive to small truths, the mind attentive to the rhythms of thought and feeling, and the spirit patient with itself and the world. Each moment is observed fully, not hurried, not forced, not reacted to. And in this observation there is a growing understanding that the self does not need to prove itself, does not need to defend itself, does not need to explain itself. It simply is fully, quietly, completely, and in being fully present, one discovers the depth of inner respect, not respect for appearances or for what others may see, but for the quiet life that has been carried within. Respect for the patience, the endurance, the small acts of restraint that have gone unnoticed. Respect for the moments of careful reflection, the gentle mastery of impulse, the quiet cultivation of peace. And in this respect, a self finds its own authority, its own space, its own enduring calm. Perhaps the most profound aspect of this transformation is that it is unshakable. The storms of the world may continue, the voices may rise and fall, the judgments may come and go like passing winds. Yet the self, rooted in quiet presence, remains. It does not bend, it does not waver, it does not falter. It observes, it breathes, it exists fully, patiently, softly, without disturbance. And in this unshakable stillness, the heart finally rests, fully aware that the strength it carries needs no witness, no applause, no validation. And so, in this quiet transformation, there is a gentle ending and a gentle beginning all at once. The self has grown not through struggle or assertion, but through observation, restraint, and patience. It carries its own power, softly, invisibly, enduringly. It is a presence that needs no recognition, a strength that needs no proof, a peace that is entirely its own. And in this calm, settled space, the heart finally knows itself, quietly, fully, and without disturbance, holding the gentle authority of the unshaken self like a soft light that never dims. There is a quiet place within the heart that waits for moments like this, a place where the mind can rest, where the breath can slow, and where the self can simply be. Have you ever noticed it, the calm that comes after long storms of thought, the soft space that appears when the need to react, to defend, to prove, finally fades? It is not loud. It does not demand attention. It does not announce itself with triumph. It simply exists, steady, patient, and gentle, like a slow river that moves beneath the surface of the earth, unseen but enduring. In this quiet, one begins to feel the fullness of presence, the gentle unfolding of the self that has been patiently shaped by observation, restraint, and reflection. The thoughts that once crowded the mind, the judgments that once pressed heavily on the chest, the misunderstandings that once ached in the heart, they are still there perhaps, but they no longer carry the same weight. They pass through, like wind through leaves, noticed, observed, and allowed, but not clinging, not demanding, not shaking the stillness that has been cultivated. And in this stillness, a soft understanding arises. You realize that the power you have been carrying quietly all along was never about the world, never about the recognition of others, never about proving anything outside of yourself. It was always inside, in the patient watching, the gentle breathing, the quiet holding of presence in the face of disturbance. And now, in this place of calm, you feel it fully, not as a sudden force, but as a steady, enduring RMTH that touches every part of the self, soft and unshakable. There is also a gentle gratitude in this quiet, not a loud or effusive kind, but a soft acknowledgement of the path that has brought you here. The nights spent in reflection, the moments of restraint, the quiet learning from silence, all of it has shaped a self that is steady, that is patient, that is whole. And in noticing this, there is no need for applause or recognition, no need for validation or reward. The presence of this calm is enough. The quiet strength within is enough. The simple awareness of being fully oneself is enough. Have you felt the deep relief of simply letting go of the pull to react, the need to explain, the desire to be understood? It is not emptiness, this letting go, but fullness, the fullness of noticing life as it is, of being present with it without the pressure to change it, control it, or bend it to your will. And in this fullness there is a soft peace, a gentle quiet that spreads through the chest, through the mind, through the very bones, until the self rests completely, without tension, without haste, without disturbance. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this quiet center is its simplicity. It does not require words. It does not require gestures. It does not require proof. It exists in the soft awareness of breath, in the careful watching of thought, in the gentle holding of presence. It is patient, enduring, unhurried. It is a calm that does not demand to be understood, a strength that does not need to be seen, a peace that is entirely its own. And in this simplicity, the self finally feels complete, softly and gently whole. There is also a tenderness in this stillness, a soft acceptance of everything that has come before, the judgments, the misunderstandings, the restlessness, the pull to react. They are not denied, they are not feared, they are simply observed, and in observing the self realizes that it has endured, that it has grown, that it has become stronger, not through struggle or proving, but through patient presence and quiet reflection. And this tenderness touches every corner of being, softening the mind, settling the heart, and calming the spirit. And so, in this final quiet, the self rests in its own authority, its own calm, its own gentle power. The voices of the world may still rise and fall, the judgments may still pass, the misunderstandings may still linger, but the self, rooted in patient observation and quiet strength, remains untouched. It watches, it breathes, it exists fully, softly, gently, completely, unshaken by the movements of the world outside. And in this soft, settled presence there is a gentle ending and a gentle beginning all at once. The heart knows itself, the mind rests in clarity, the spirit feels calm, steady, and entirely whole. And in this quiet there is a truth that needs no words, no applause, no acknowledgement, that the self, patient and observing, gentle and strong, unshaken and whole, is enough, fully enough, quietly enough, completely enough, and entirely at peace.